Boom! We are now live. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2. Sorry I'm starting in a little bit late. I hope you are all very, very well. Good to see you all. Good to see in the comments straight away. Mr. Cordy Chap, hey ho. The Sergeant Bilko is here. Boom, right at you. Bald Billets boy. We've got all the regulars. Sorry again, I didn't set this up with much notice tonight. But very, very good to see you all. So, ho ho ho, indeed. Good to see you all. How is everything going for you guys? It is good here. I've had a quiet weekend. It is already getting into November. It's kind of crazy. The year is already getting towards the end. James Kelly, boom, right back at you. Good to see you. And yeah, I've got a lot of topics on tonight. Not a lot of updates from my perspective. I have not had time to do much with my chat TV other than watch it. It is still a great way to watch, although yeah, I've been having some ideas lately of ways to make it easier to use, which I do want to build in, and we are looking more at the idea of doing the subscription-based tier for the additional features, just so I can keep adding stuff and improving it. But please remember to go check it out, and remember that you can bookmark the bundles that, for example, you create, so you can skip them and watch them even without logging in, which I think makes it really, really cool. But yes, all of that. Good to see you all indeed. Remember that if you want to address a comment to me during the show and name it at me, just do the @ thing and make it pop up orange, and then I will be able to talk right back at you. Good to see you all. Anyway, let's get into the topics for tonight. I've got a fair bit to talk about, and if there's some spare time, we might do some tunes. We'll see how we go. So first one, it's part of the title of the show tonight, is that lawmakers now, they're considering in earnest the idea of dramatically increasing the number of foreign workers in Japan. It's kind of funny how the government kind of put off talking about this for a long time, but it's really becoming very real now. And as they consider these laws to dramatically expand the number of categories and the number of workers allowed to come into Japan, lawmakers are saying, and this is partly a reflection on what's happened with the Brazilian Nikkei Japanese or Nikkei Brazilian workers who came to Japan. They're just assuming that everything would work out because granddaddy was Japanese. Isn't really enough, and language is a big part of that. I wish I'd gotten free Japanese lessons. I had to trudge 20 miles through the snow barefoot, milking cows and everything like that to be able to learn Japanese. But that said, absolutely. It's not just the fact that it's good to make Japanese available for people to learn and make it more accessible, but at the same time, the hope is that I think if you make Japanese language education more universal, it might help people to understand and appreciate. Hey Chris, good to see you. Might help make people appreciate a little bit better the fact that language is an issue. Steve from Berkeley, good to see you. It's this thing that, one thing that I certainly struggled with was, I think to a degree it's probably getting better in places like Tokyo, but there still is that thing that Japanese can be very empathetic to one another, but they can be completely lacking in empathy, I think, towards foreigners, which is to say that they just are incapable of putting themselves in the shoes of foreigners, which makes strange things sort of come out. I've heard people come up with excuses and arguments that they wouldn't apply it to other Japanese people, but they apply it to foreigners because they kind of just shut down empathy when they do that. And it's based on ignorance and lack of awareness when it comes up, and this is one of those things. The idea that why can't I read emails as fast as everybody else, was something I got in the early days when I was the only foreigner in the company. And yeah, truth was I would skim over them because I wouldn't read them in close detail because I couldn't keep up otherwise. And I would explain. They would sit down and make me read the mails. They says, well, you can read it, can't you? Read this out to me. And I could read it out loud. But of course it took me a bit longer to do than a normal Japanese person. But there was never the understanding of that. So I think from that perspective of also just facilitating, getting people to appreciate the fact that, as we should ourselves when we're dealing with non-English speakers, you've always got to appreciate the fact that they're just as smart, they've often got as much or similar or better experience than you have. But doing that through the lens of a foreign language is a challenge which you've got to take into account when you're doing that. It means I'm constantly reminding, for example, English speakers who are dealing with Japanese not to use proverbs or expressions or, especially like English people, and New Zealanders do this as well. We like to use sort of witty puns and phrases and so on, which are frankly even to like other English speakers are sometimes pretty obtuse, and to non-native speakers it's just pointless using it. You're just speaking gibberish. So I think things like that, I think it's a really good thing that Yeah, that the government's actually cottoning on to this, and I realize it's for their own benefit, but yeah, I think the idea that the government is going to be responsible for making sure, or at least is considering making Japanese language learning available and mandatory, is actually a good idea. It's a good idea from the perspective that it ties into the debate around multiculturalism as well. I think there's been a swing. I remember from when I was going through school, the idea of multiple approaches to integrating, and this is for New Zealand, a country of immigrants, a large indigenous population as well, but essentially Maori are 10% of the population of New Zealand, and from that perspective, in fact, it might even be more than that now. It's dated information, but the point being, the approach that you take to integrating foreign migrants to the country is something, and they'd always contrast the multiculturalist approach, which Canada sort of favours and Europe has favoured, of allowing people to bring and preserve their cultures when they come, from the idea that your culture can be, your own country can be enriched by the cultures and by the values that people bring, allowing them to preserve those cultures. And the idea of melting pot culture, which is America is considered a model of, and Australia has to a degree as well, where people would come and accept the identity, the new national identity of the country that they're coming into, which is a country of migrants, but they share a common, sense of American or Australian or whatever nationalism. Personally, I think it's good to have a shared identity, not to the point of being chauvinistic and being to the point of thinking you're better than everybody else, but I think having a common shared culture is a good thing. Certainly, I have migrant ancestors that came to New Zealand and expected that they had to fit in and integrate, and I've come to Japan, although I look like this, of course, I've taken the time to speak Japanese culture and to try to do my best to fit in as well. And based on my own personal experience, to me, multiculturalism, it doesn't mean that you are intolerant or reject having multiple cultures, but the idea of using that as an excuse for not integrating immigrants is lazy, and it can actually have negative consequences when you have, sectors within society that feel disenfranchised and feel disconnected and not a part of the society that they're living in. And that's something that I think Japan should be careful to try to avoid. It's something that they already have allowed with the Brazilians, and if they're not careful, it's going to happen with this new wave of foreigners that are coming in. So something like this, something as basic as making sure that people understand the culture that they're coming into and the language, I think is a really, really good thing, and the government should spend all the money that they can to make sure that people can come in and enjoy. And it's funny because I like Canada. In many ways, I like Canada better than America, but I would say I actually admire the American approach to. America is successful based on its immigration. It's a powerhouse based on that, and I'd say it's leveraged the power of its migrants, as a melting pot in a way that is something that I think is a lesson for other countries that want to build themselves up as immigrant-based superpowers. So that's personal opinion there, but I think this is it's important to recognize this and not just dismiss it and say, oh, let them come here and speak English and be foreigners. And so, of course, you're always going to be foreign. It doesn't mean rejecting all foreigners or difference, but at the same time, helping people and encouraging integration, I think, is important. Channel Ralph, good to see you. Yay, yes, indeed. Also, I loves and Kirisu. Very good to see you. Yo, indeed. Boom to everybody who's just joined. Chris as well. I see that you just joined, so good to see you. Boom. And yes, good to see everybody. So that's the first topic. And there's the J-Vlog. Indeed, that's the salute there. That's more of a kind of a yay symbol there next to Chris. Good to see you all. And don't forget to say hello if you're joining in the comments. Chris, how would this work for foreign workers who speak Japanese already? At a JLPT level 1, for instance. Well, there's a JLPT level 1 now. It's NLPT, which I haven't taken and I don't want to take because that exam is a pain. And seriously, it'll take me months to prepare and do that again. But I've taken it. I've passed it once. That was good enough. That was a few years ago. I guess what I'm guessing is, and what they're talking about is probably making something like the JLPT a government-backed standard, which I think is also a good idea, and having a consistent, recognized government standard for proficiency. as a target, and to foster and fund education both in Japan and abroad of people to meet those standards is a really good idea. And to the extent that you have that certificate and that you meet that, it'd suck if they'd make me have to do it again. I'd hope that they'd recognize JLPT as an existing equivalent standard, and that you wouldn't be forced to take it again. But yeah, I would presume that for people who already have level 1, the new system coming in recognizing fluency would recognize, as they should, that JLPT 1 people are sufficiently fluent to enter university and to enter a Japanese company without the need for additional language support. And anyone below that should get differing degrees of language support, is my view. Indeed, Tai Nakamura, good to see you, sir. Yeah, good to see all you guys. So I think this is great news. I actually think that this is a good thing, and I actually think that the government, if they're really serious about bringing in the degree of workers that they need to bring in, which frankly is going to be like a lot, like probably we're going to go from 2 million foreigners now to probably 4, 5, 6 million in a very short period of time. And the fear is not that having foreigners will inherently lead to social disruption in and of itself. It's that, if you don't manage it, if you just leave the issue to itself, there are things that happen when you allow people to be alienated and not feel integrated or supported when they come. And if the government really wants to make those people a success, they should totally make the necessary investment. This is where it starts. So it's actually good that the lawmakers are saying this. So that's the first story today anyway. Welcome to everyone who's coming in. Sorry I started a little bit late and didn't have time to set up with a tweet notice, but good to see you all. So what else have we got in here? This is interesting. BTS. What does this actually stand for? Does anyone tell me in the comments what BTS stands for? I know they're like one of the biggest K-pop groups in the world, but it's like, I always think of it as Japanese. Bangtan Boys. Okay, well anyway, this Korean K-pop group, apparently one of the members recently around, I believe it was on August 9, was photographed in Korea, as always being chased around by paparazzi, wearing a shirt, which in Korea is probably not a bad thing per se. It's celebrating Korean Liberation Day, i.e. the day that Japan lost the war, and the member wore this shirt, and this what says, patriotism, our history, liberation, Korea. Over and over, our history, patriotism, liberty, and beside it's got a picture of the atom bomb, which was dropped on the day that he decided to wear the t-shirt and parade around. So, it's a t-shirt celebrating the A-bombing of Japan as liberation, Korean history. Not entirely unrelatable, but of course the thing is that they were planning to come to Japan for a concert tour and a bunch of TV appearances this month, and this started to blow up in about September. People found these t-shirts of one of the singers of this group going around with a shirt basically praising the A-bombing of Japan, and the result of that was, although their concerts at Tokyo Dome and so on remain sold out, I mean they're a huge group in Japan, Asahi TV decided at the last minute to pull their act. There was a bit of criticism that these people, or basically that this band, praising the A-bombings of Japan, albeit the shirt's in the name of Korean liberation, but it's insensitive towards people in Japan who, most of the people who died in the A-bombings were innocent, regular people. So, you're celebrating a massacre of people there. Of course, from the Korean perspective, they're celebrating the consequence of that, which was the liberation of Korea. Yes, this is seen as being a bit anti-Japanese, as has been known to happen over there, and yes, the result was that the TV station decided to ban them. This actually made the BBC News when this happened. I mean, again, they're a very big group globally, and it's kind of funny. There's another news article which I saved, I think is in here, which has Japanese. Well, she has a Japanese ending, a Japanese summary of Korean internet reactions. Most of the Korean reactions seem to say, yeah, these guys, if they want to be a global group, they've got to be a little bit more considerate as to what, they've got to realize what people, be a bit more careful about how other people overseas will interpret something, even if it's something that's positive in Korea. Yeah, from my perspective, I kind of, again, I can sort of see the issue as a breakdown, but sure, if you want to come over, I mean, again, if you want to, you wouldn't wear a, well, I don't want to be needlessly provocative either. Obviously, Koreans are kind of always happy to get back at Japan because Japan, colonized, annexed, and ruled Korea for, from 1909 until 1945. and they're a bit sore about that. But you know, again, you don't want to go make money in a country, you know, with wearing a T-shirt celebrating, you know, a very, very large massacre of tens of thousands of their people. Yes, indeed, and indeed, Koreans died, American prisoners of war died. You know, I mean, it's a silly thing to praise, right? Frankly, and it's just kind of immature. But there again, patriotism and frankly, racial patriotism is very big over there. Yes, although it probably wasn't thinking, well, it obviously was. They show an A-bomb, they are thinking of Japan, and it's playing into the kind of frankly childish anti-Japanese nationalism that's actually kind of mainstream in Korea. But there again, they see themselves as the victims of Japan and able to celebrate when Japan failed and when Japan lost, even in a way like this. Which is why it's always so difficult to improve things, even though I really wish that they would. But there we go. So that made a big news story this week. It's unfortunate. I don't talk about rugby very much on this, but actually I've got two stories saved tonight which are in here. One is this thing here, which actually really surprised me. This got shared. So I didn't know this about the All Blacks. They're pretty quiet, you know, about it. They always keep training secret. They don't share a lot of information. They did do a documentary on Amazon Prime earlier this year from last season about some small inside tips on how they coach and prepare for matches. The New Zealand rugby team, the world champion rugby team. But I did not know this. Apparently the coach recently revealed that with the current All Black team, he never does a pre-match pep talk. He never does a coach talk for the team on the day. The reason for this is, hey Olivier, good to see you. The reason for this is apparently, he says it in here, the coach, it's kind of New Zealandish in a way. New Zealanders like to act staunch and stoic and stuff like that, but he actually says if they're not prepared by midweek, there's nothing on game day that's going to make a difference. We've taken the attitude that if you have to do a team talk on the Saturday, then it's too late. Which I get. My dad used to say that about exams as well. You get plenty of opportunity as a coach to get in front of the players through the whole week. It's about preparation, clarity, and then just getting out there and doing it. So it's kind of funny. The guys don't need to be motivated. They're self-motivated, and they're not self-motivated. And if they're not self-motivated, then they don't make the team. So this was kind of shocking to me to read this. But this is the world champion rugby team, and they do not need to. They don't do team talks before the game. They just prepare. They make sure they're prepared by midweek, and they go out and they do it. So that's kind of cool. The reason for this is Olivier. That's entirely possible that Olivier is the one behind this. But yes, indeed. Boom. This was just kind of cool. I've never actually seen one of the Tesla trucks like driving around on the road. Mr. Cordy Chep, I see the comment there about don't invade and commit genocide. Yes. Yeah. Although it's interesting. I mean, don't forget, Koreans were Japanese citizens. Koreans, until 1943, all volunteered to join the Japanese military, and some of the worst B-grade war criminals, i.e. the prison camp guards and so on, were from there as well. So they're more like the Lithuanian and Estonian and Austrian guards at German camps. You know, I don't think they're in the same position, for example, as the Chinese, although no doubt they still did suffer a lot, you know, and Japanese rule was not kind to Korea, and we know this because they're still pissed off about it, and Japan shouldn't have gone there in the first place. But you know, I don't think it's quite the same as saying that the Koreans were like the Jewish people, for example. But you know, yeah, sure, definitely you go there, you're gonna have t-shirts like that, and that's what happens. So yeah, this truck, the Tesla truck. So this is a thing. Elon Musk, of course, has been acting like a dick, and I wish that he would shut down his Twitter account and allow safety lines at the factories and you know, not just be a kind of a dickhead. But at the same time, what he does is cool. And this truck, I mean, I don't think I'd ever say a truck is cool, but this truck is cool. Like, you watch a fully electric big truck come up and pick up a load, go out on the highway, and the idea as well that these are going to be moving towards becoming, you know, self-driving, electric. This is really important. This sort of technology is going to really change society and the world. It's going to change logistics. It's going to change the way that you can shop and receive, and that you can. It's going to change where you can live and be effective. It's a huge thing, and it's just cool. The design is cool. It looks cool. Jalopnik, I think I got this through Gizmodo, but check it out. Just this truck is super cool. Yeah, this is speaking of foreigners coming and working in Japan. All I can really say is if you get an opportunity, which I doubt many of the people watching this are in that sort of a position, but certainly what's happened around Vietnam, Philippines, China, Southeast Asia, is that they hear that they can come to Japan to work on an apprentice training program where they can work on farms and factories and so on, and get experience working in Japan and learning technology and getting some extra money, which all sounds very good. But then they come to Japan, and there are just so many cases of worker abuse that are happening with this right now. And this is cases where, for example, particularly on farms, you hear lots of stories where, for example, the sponsoring farmers will take the we'll take the passports away, we'll basically not pay them, and we'll basically treat these workers, often, you know, from other Asian countries, as slaves. And, you know, and then they run away, and the police treat them running away from their sponsors as illegal immigration. So then they go round them up and, you know, turns them into criminals. They threaten them, and there are cases where these workers have gone and retaliated against their bosses in the worst way possible by killing them and so on. So in the very few cases that one actually escapes and actually gets to a labor lawyer and actually discovers that these people are having their, even as foreign apprentice workers in Japan, they still have to treat them in accordance with the Japanese labor laws. And discovering that, for example, in a country where, you know, you get 1,000 yen an hour at McDonald's, these workers are getting worked half to death. They've been being treated as slave labor. We're getting paid 300 yen an hour working as an apprentice, and they, you know, and they actually have been there are labor rights groups that have been finding these people, and in some cases, and it would be pretty brave to do this. I don't know how you get to bring a case against your employer for that and stay in the country for the time it takes to bring the case, but these cases have been brought where these guys are paying these guys 300 yen an hour, $3 an hour overtime, and just working them to death. So I'd say based on that, I wish that the Japanese government would realize that its lack of, when they talk about enforcement around the apprenticeship work visas that have been happening in Japan, it seems to be that they are more concerned with workers illegally running away. I mean, literally, they're more worried about runaway slaves than the fact that there are slaves. They're more worried about getting them back to their masters and not having them running loose around the countryside unsupervised than they are about the fact that they're being, you know, abused, and what this does to Japan's international reputation. And like I say, Japan can't credibly open up all these new working visa categories and try to get all these foreign workers in with this happening, because this is Japan's international reputation right now for the countries where it most needs to get the extra labor from. You know, if you ever have a chance to get an apprenticeship visa to Japan, I would say be very, very careful and really don't do it. I mean, seriously. There'll be better ways to come and work on farms and hospitals and factories, probably very soon on full visas. This visa system is basically, it's a farce, and it's really damaging Japan's international reputation, and this is, you know, just ridiculous stuff. And I would say credit to the people, I believe Vietnamese in this case, who were brave enough to actually take the risk of coming forward to actually make the claim and to point out that their human rights, as well as their legal rights in Japan as residents, were being abused by these workers, and that this happens routinely. And frankly, it looks like the Ministry of Justice is not interested generally in enforcing it, which is why now there's a lawsuit. So yeah, good to see that that's happening. Trump, you might have noticed this week, he's talking about Japan again. I mean, does he ever say anything nice? Does he ever say, you know, Australia, I've got no problem with Australia, you know, Korea, I like the food, it's nice. Does he ever say that? No. If he's talking about your country, you know, you sort of have to duck behind a chair. I guess that's what Shinzo kind of does. And so now he started talking about Japan again, as you'd expect. And, you know, we are... hey, the 80s were a great time in many ways. I mean, I love the Goonies. You know, we had Ewoks. We had, you know, Cyndi Lauper. We had a lot of very, very good things. We also had Japan bashing on imports of Japanese autos into America. You know, the Smash a Daihatsu Day and that sort of thing, which Japan responded to at the time by heavily investing in making sure that the cars that were sold in America were manufactured in America with American jobs. Nearly all the Japanese cars now sold in America are made there. You know, Ohio, Indiana, you know, full of Japanese Toyota, Honda plants that manufacture these cars there now. So, you know, there was a time when this was a real source of trade tension, and various things were done to rebalance that. But it is true that in spite of the fact that now Japanese cars are more often manufactured in America, and they've done something to try to redress the trade imbalance thing about cars. For whatever reason, Trump's basically still frozen in 1984, and he started to say, about the trade imbalance with Japan, and that it's because Americans buy Japanese cars, but why don't Japanese buy American cars? And he implies it's because of tax and trade barriers that Japan must remove. So I reminded everyone, I've said this before, and this is generally known whenever this article comes up. There basically are no trade barriers to American companies importing cars into Japan and selling them here. There are none. There's no trade barriers against it. The only trade barriers are, one, Japanese drive on the other side of the road, so you have to sell cars that have the steering wheel on the other side of the car, which American car manufacturers, it's like they don't want to sell cars in Japan, in Australia, in Britain, or anywhere that has the steering wheel on the other side of the car. They don't manufacture, right-hand side drive cars, which is fine. But if you drive an American car, it's a hassle going through highway tolls and drive-throughs and everything, where you've got to lean out the passenger side to be able to do anything. Also, the chassis frames. When Europeans sell cars in Japan, they sell the car chassis frames that fit into the car parks in Japan, that fit into the roads and so on, and a lot of the larger cars won't fit. And the third and biggest problem is that Japanese consumers, Japanese manufacturers in Japan, offer basically free manufacturer-based warranties and road service for multiple years after it's sold. In America, it's almost always you have to pay extra for it. And the network and degree of care in Japan is enormous, and again, you'll have American car fans that will import cars and put up with the lack of service. But again, if you want to sell, you've got to have a dealer network and a maintenance network here in Japan that no US manufacturer has in Japan. GM tried selling the Saturn just after I was here in Japan, and they put a lot of ads out for it. They did do a genuine push around that one car. They made the parts available, they converted it to the other side. And when they decided that, the car was ugly AF, I mean, it wasn't a great car. It wasn't the best one maybe to advertise here. And it's not that there aren't some great American cars, but they haven't committed to selling them here, and as a result, the American car manufacturers are not sending the cars to Japan to be sold. And then there's no dealer network, there's no maintenance or warranty support network in Japan for any of these cars, and so it's natural that they're not being bought here. Contrast that to BMW, to Audi, to Mercedes-Benz, particularly the German car manufacturers here sell like crazy. I mean, they do really well. Volkswagen, the German manufacturers have done really well here, and they sell under the same conditions that the Americans would sell here, including the fact that Germans also drive on the other side of the road from Japan. So again, he's making a big deal out of it, and sure, there is a trade imbalance between America and Japan, and he's taken a nationalist, an idea that he wants to do deals that are more focused on whether they are a win for Japan rather than whether they are objectively based on fair and objective trade rules, like multilateral trade treaties do. So look, and make no mistake either, the idea that trade doesn't need to be fair with foreign workers, that the idea that you should be looking to protect Americans and American workers and the American economy first, this is something that Trump shares in common with Bernie Sanders. It's actually a socialist perspective. It's a command and control. It's trying to control the economy, artificially. From a political and a policy perspective, he's entitled to do it, as anyone is entitled to pursue any policy. It's always frustrating when he, basically makes up 30, 40 out-of-year date memes to sort of back it up. And it's no question a reckoning is coming, and Japan's been preparing for it by basically setting up free trade deals with as many other countries as possible so that America doesn't have so much leverage. But look, in the end of the day, from my perspective, I mean, I would love to be able to, buy anything that I want to get from America. It was, I have stuff in this room that whenever I go over to America, I go and buy stuff that I can't buy here, mainly because it's just not, sent over here by the manufacturers. But I would love to be able to get cheaper cheese, cheaper milk, all that sort of stuff. I'd like for all of that to improve as well. So we'll see what happens, but certainly it looks like the old trade thing is going to come, and it probably means as a result, when they start squeezing, that Americans are going to get to send more stuff to Japan. Again, given the good relationship, I'm hoping it's going to work out okay, but it's a little bit scary when you look at what's been going on in other places, particularly when it's based on incorrect information. You just worry that it's going to be done irrationally. And we don't want to go back to the days of smashing up cars or anything like that. That happened when I was a kid, you know. And even though I was in New Zealand, and we certainly weren't smashing up Japanese cars in New Zealand, because again, Americans wouldn't make cars that we could drive in New Zealand. No one complains about New Zealanders not buying American cars, but you know, we all bought second-hand Japanese cars. We would import them from Japan after they were used, because they were the cheapest and they were compatible with our roads. So yes, anyway, that is interesting, and that is starting again. This is kind of interesting. The algorithm on YouTube is always changing. This is good news, I guess, for me, I suppose, that it's now, lately it's been favoring recommending longer videos. Yeah, which is good to hear. I mean, I think the idea, for a long time, the algorithm obviously favored, you know, 3 to 7 minute videos. And there was kind of a formula, like an MTV music video, fast cut, sort of talking, jab kind of format. It's nice to see that they are going for even trying to find standard yellow mustard. I don't know what that means to JVlog, but for some reason that comment was flagged, but I just unflagged it, so hopefully you'll see it now. But yeah, so who knows what's going on with the algorithm. This is why, if you want to become rich on YouTube, do not do it based on AdSense, because they keep changing the algorithm and you never know what's going to happen with it. But for those of you who want to know the latest is, according to tubefilter.com, that the recommendation algorithm is lately favoring longer videos, which is a good thing. I mean, seriously, most of the stuff that I watch on YouTube lately, yeah, it's been longer format. So yep, that's pretty cool. I love this concept. I don't think I shared this on the show before, and I want to share this now. So basically, there's a cafe that's set up, I believe, in Akihabara, which is basically a cafe that has all of these sort of human-shaped robots that walk around, and they are basically, the machines are controlled by disabled people, physically disabled people, who sit in the room, in a room in the cafe, and they're basically able to sit at a computer station, and even though if they're immobile or paralyzed or whatever, they can see, and they can speak to the customers, and they can basically take orders and serve drinks for them. So basically, it's a way that allows disabled people to work serving people, talking with people in a cafe using robot technology, which I think is super cool. Basically, each one of the staff has a robot avatar that they use for serving. I think this is really, really cool. The Dawn Cafe. Where is this? Let's just check this location. I'm pretty sure it's a very Akihabara type of thing. The Dawn Cafe is up to upcoming trial project. By the way, this blog, I think I've pointed it out before, but spoontamago.com is awesome, and you should subscribe to it. It's got a lot of design and sort of really cool, innovative stuff going around Tokyo. But this one is basically, that's right, people who are sometimes bedridden or unable to move will be able to manipulate these robots. So it will be for 2 sessions this year, from November 26 to 30 and December 3 to 7. It will be staffed by Orihime D robots that are developed by Orilab. And where will it be? Where will it be? Come on, you got all this information, but where will it be? The pop-up cafe will be located on the 1st floor of the Japan Foundation building in Akasaka. Oh, okay. So I believe that's the Nippon Foundation. They're the ones that run Nippon.com, actually. So I guess I should go tell the Nippon.com people I'm coming over and I want to be served by a robot person. That'd be pretty cool. Anyway, okay, I know where that is. That's I go kickboxing near there, so I might go and do that. That's kind of cool. So anyway, I thought that was super cool. Yeah, this is more going into the Korean reactions to the BTS getting banned from Japanese TVs. Kind of serves them right, but what can we do? So Feed the Corey points out, good to see you, Feed the Corey, by the way. Feed the Corey points out that your 20 to 40 minute walking tour video suddenly got a recent spike in revenue ad growth. So you think the algorithm is working? Well, there you go. And certainly I think if it's worthwhile content, now, yeah, man, make it longer. Geez, I mean, works for me. This, I've been waiting for this. So there's been rumors about this coming around for a while. The idea of taking a smartphone and being able to fold it out like a book and basically use it a little bit, perhaps like my iPad mini here. So you take the iPad mini, you know, it's basically, well, come think of it, it's not, this is about 3 iPhones worth, the iPad mini, but the idea that you could fold this out and have a larger screen, which I think for things like, for example, Chaosilator, some apps like editing apps, that you might want to be able to have a bigger screen to see, but generally you want it to be compact enough, like the idea of a flip phone, compact, but you can fold it out to get a bigger screen. This concept is basically now, lately, the LED screens that they've been using, are now able to be flexible enough that you can have a single seamless screen that you can fold basically perfectly. Yeah, credit to Samsung that they're the ones bringing this out. I believe I've also seen a Chinese company launch something similar as well, but I must admit, I think I've said for a while now, I'm now sufficiently locked into the Apple ecosystem on mobile, at least, not on computer, that I must guiltily admit that even though Samsung has been releasing innovative phones, as is Huawei, for example, with lots of cameras, with better screens, better CPUs, I'm not willing to make the jump to Android, just because I've had a few Android phones and I've gotten frustrated with the performance. I've had frustration with the inconsistency of compatibility of different apps. I've had frustration with the fact that you never know when or whether it's going to be eligible for operating system updates and upgrades. And all of that you're used to getting on iOS, which is what makes me stick to it. But I have become really aware lately, especially with my latest iPhone, that they're just not they don't feel like they're progressing. They're really, really good phones. You know, no complaints with them at all, but you just feel like they've kind of stagnated really since the iPhone 5. There's been nothing really significantly, you know, all the changes since then have kind of felt incremental. There are no dramatic new improvements in technology, which the potential is there. The idea of having like multiple lenses to get something more like a DSLR, that technology's been around for 4 or 5 years now, and you get the feeling it's not coming soon to Apple. And now Samsung has this idea of this screen being able to fold out, you know, radical new technology that I think is something that, you know, any smartphone company that wanted to come out and disrupt the smartphone market, this technology is there, and you do get the feeling that Apple as an incumbent is a little bit too comfortable. And, you know, Samsung should go get them with this. You know, I think it's great if they can go and roll this out for customers, and I'm really excited to see an Android in anticipation of phones coming out like this has made I believe it's the next version of its operating system compatible with these phones by default. They have these multiple screens, so I think that's kind of cool. Sergeant Bilko, what do I mean stagnating? They're more Goldie looking than ever. Gaudy looking. No, I don't know. I think technologically the cameras keep getting a little bit better every year. The screen keeps getting a little bit better every year. The battery gets a little bit better every year. The performance gets a little bit better every year, and I'm happy with all of these things, and that's why I upgraded this year. But I don't feel like I'm getting wowed by Apple stuff anymore. And again, we're spoiled. It's a great product, but you know, it's been a great product for going on, you know, geez, how long now? 10 years. And it hasn't changed all of that much. They've refined, but I don't think they've really dramatically improved. Feed the Corey asks, do I see Apple and others making foldable tablets to be compatible with Samsung? Absolutely. Xiaomi, I'm not sure. Google basically, they don't manufacture. They team up with other manufacturers, but I could certainly see the big screen manufacturers, LG and Samsung, and the Korean manufacturers absolutely will get into this. The calls get better every year. Possibly. Well, that's maybe. But there again, you know, you could downgrade to a Zoolander phone and still have good calls, so there you go. More stuff on the news on the oh yeah, this is another one. So there's again, as they're passing and they're debating having more foreigners coming and work in Japan, there's been a lot of story on foreigners working in Japan lately, and another one that's come up, well, what if they don't all speak Japanese? We must help them speak Japanese. Good thing, do that. Another thing that's come up, which kind of got my attention in a bad way, it looks like it's not exactly as bad as I thought it was, but they were kind of saying, oh, if we give them health insurance, like we give all workers in Japan, including foreigners, all get health insurance. And there was this thing where, particularly in Kyoto and Osaka, there were people who were like reporting that they were seeing foreigners claiming health insurance when they weren't entitled to, which were investigated and found to be groundless. That was based on the prejudicial belief some Japanese people had, often elderly Japanese people had, that foreigners are not supposed to be entitled to Japanese health insurance, which of course we are. We work, we live here, we're residents here, we pay taxes the same, and we get health insurance the same. However, there is a suspicion that somehow that foreigners, by receiving health insurance, are somehow taking benefits that belong to Japanese. Again, this happens in every country, right? When they hear that foreigners are taking welfare benefits. So immediately the question came up, you know, when workers get health insurance, their families are covered by this. And if we give health insurance to foreigners, which, by the way, duh, you already do, there's an idea that the way that the current health insurance law is defined, that you could fly in overseas family members to receive healthcare in Japan under the worker health insurance. I don't know if anyone does that or that's actually even a problem right now, but the fear of having lots of workers come in and the idea that they could give free Japanese healthcare to extended families is something that's caused Parliament to become sufficiently concerned that they are going to redefine the law around the application of social welfare, social health insurance, to make sure that only family members who are residents of Japan are entitled to health insurance. And then they realize, oh, but what about little Timmy? What about little Keisuke, who's on an exchange, to another country? They're also going to make specific exceptions for Japanese who are on working, being sent abroad to work, or children who are sent abroad to study. Basically, they want people who are permanently, basically established residents of Japan, even if they're temporarily outside of Japan. So again, not cool. The conversation is kind of born out of irrational prejudice, a little bit like the Japanese learning thing. In the end of the day, sure, why not? I mean, it'd be surprising if I could allow my Japanese grandmother to come and claim Japanese health benefits. She doesn't need to. She lives in New Zealand where healthcare is still socialized and free anyway. But certainly, if you were from a horrible country that didn't offer free medical care, like Sudan or Ethiopia or the United States of America, the temptation to come and fly your family over for the free medical care that they would get here if you were working here under a visa would be tempting. And the Japanese government is going to shut it down. So yeah, it sucks to be in a country, I suppose, where you have expensive health care, and you don't get to pass on those benefits. But again, this is going to be entitled for. I don't have a Japanese grandma. I have a New Zealand grandma who lives in New Zealand. I'm a Japanese permanent resident. Apparently what's worrying the lawmakers, Mr. Kordychev, is that theoretically my grandmother could fly to Japan and claim free Japanese health care, based on my insurance, which I had no idea was possible. I don't think it is possible, actually, but they're afraid that someone might try that, and they want to explicitly shut it down. But my grandmother, who's a resident of New Zealand, should only be able to claim the free healthcare in New Zealand, and that's the whole reason they don't have to worry, at least in my case, because I come from a country with basically government-sponsored, free health insurance. But yeah, for countries that don't have it, they want to make sure it's never a risk. So some irrational prejudice-based discussions, but all good. I don't talk about rugby on the show very much, even though I do enjoy watching it very much. I've found lately I've been enjoying watching this channel, the Matthews fan, or the Matthews gang. And it's basically, he's an American NFL fan who watches rugby videos, and he watches the sort of rugby videos that I like to watch, just sort of nostalgic, watching my compilation clips of my favorite teams or my favorite rugby players, and it's kind of funny. It made me realize that the reaction genre of videos is actually really compelling. Whereas although it's all stuff which I enjoy watching, it's actually really enjoyable to watch someone who doesn't know anything about rugby but appreciates American football watching and commenting on, oh, isn't that great, from an American football perspective. And I must admit, watching him make these and watching him do all of these great reaction videos to my favorite rugby videos and my favorite rugby players makes me think it'd be really kind of fun to do the reverse of that as a rugby fan who knows nothing about American football, to actually maybe do some American football compilation clip reaction videos. I'm kind of tempted to start doing reaction videos, the opposite of what this guy does. The problem is that he does it really well because he's extremely charismatic and good, and I'm not sure I'd come across as credible. I'd just come across as a strange guy with an accent who doesn't even understand football trying to talk about it. It'd probably aggravate a lot of Americans if I did it that way, but I must admit, when you watch it, you kind of discover a joy in watching somebody discover something that you love. And frankly, yeah, even it seems sincere, and I enjoy watching it. It made me realize, oh, there you go, I should do that too. If you don't know much about rugby and you want to, check out this guy. He checks out really good videos. Plus, I'll put some reaction. I'll put in some recommendations that have done it then. But yes, I should probably get a hat. You're right. But it would be kind of fun. We need more non-reaction videos. Well, maybe that's why I can go and that they're not react. I'm not impressed. I could just do that, but that would probably. Steve from Berkeley would watch it. Well, you know what? So for the American people in particular, the only thing I've ever had was when I worked at an American firm. And there were these American guys, and they were talking about, I think they were from UCLA and Berkeley, and they were talking about the play. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, you never heard of the play? And I'm like, no, I've never heard of the play. What are you talking about? I mean, I'm not from your country. I mean, I've watched different strokes. I know your TV, but I don't know your football. And it's like, okay, show them the play. So they sent me a video of the play, and I must admit, I've been down the rabbit hole of the play. And I must admit, the play is an amazing introduction to American football. It's really surprising they haven't made a movie. They must have made a movie about that play. I mean, I guess the YouTube video sort of do that on its own. So I must admit, you know, in a completely innocent, I don't know the rules, I don't know the players, I watch rugby, I'm like, why are you all wearing all this padding? But at the same time, I know that they hit like mofos, right? I mean, you know, they are big, fast, scary guys. And to tell you the truth, as a citizen of New Zealand and a fan of the world champion New Zealand rugby team, we're all really glad that the Americans play American football and they don't play rugby, because we know the statistics of how big and how fast and how powerful those guys are, and if they all came and played rugby, no one else would be able to play it anymore. You know, we get to enjoy it because the Americans don't come in and overwhelm it. But at the same time, you know, I know nothing about American football, so I'm tempted to do that. So I guess if there are people there interested in me doing that, I mean, the whole point is that he feeds off recommendations. People say, okay, you got to go check out the best plays ever of, you know, such and such a player, my favorite player or my favorite team. Come watch this video, 10 million views, and understand why, you know, the biggest hits in NFL and, you know, whatever. But again, this guy is like, oh, that's an amazing hit. Oh my God, did he? I need to be able to do it like that. But I'm tempted to do it. I'm really tempted to do it. The way he does it for rugby is really, really awesome, and I'm tempted to do it for American football. People seem to like it. Yes, comment on NFL games. I'm pretty sure it will come off as trolling, but I like this, and I think it would actually be kind of cool. So maybe I will. Maybe I will. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do that just as an experiment, see how it goes. I'm sure. If I did it, should I do it on a separate channel? I guess I'll do it on this channel. I'd annoy a lot of people, I guess, if I suddenly started putting up NFL videos on this channel. I should probably do a separate channel for it. But yeah, I'm kind of tempted anyway. Yes, Steve from Berkeley, I appreciate that fact. In fact, that's actually the first thing that I say. When people say rugby is really cool because we don't wear pads and protection, I point out immediately that no. You know, not having pads and protection means, as someone who played rugby, that means that you are very mindful of protecting yourself when you're tackling people and so on. And when you see American football players play, they use their bodies as missiles. I mean, they play in ways that you wouldn't dare play. You wouldn't last for like 5 minutes playing rugby with the way that they play American football with all the pads and stuff on. Again, to me, you know, which is why American football, as a player, when I look at it as a player, it looks to me like a series of car crashes. I mean, you know, once in a season rugby hits, you get like happen every play in American football, and I guess that's why it would be really cool. Separate channel so you don't get the copyright strike. True. You know what? Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I should do that. But anyway, if you want an idea for the concept, this guy, the Matthews fam, the Matthews gang, doing all of these reaction videos to rugby, and they're all like 5-minute videos and stuff like that. They're really cool. I really do enjoy them. So yeah, I don't even have to monetize it. Actually, it'd just be fun to do. So okay, I like the encouraging comments here. I'm tempted to do that. The crappiest apartment of the year awards are back. To really be able to see this, I think you want to open it in Safari. Open in Safari, but boom. And these are plans of the worst apartments in the last year that have been seen being advertised. So what's this first one? ここに建てていいんすか? いいから建てろ。建てたもん勝ち。売れるっすか? あと So I don't know, there's a building here that they've just jammed up against another building on top of the car park and pushed against all the verandas. So yes, there is that indeed. So this apartment, this is an apartment plan where you will notice there's a lovely 6.7 jaw Western style living room. In fact, that is a bedroom there with closets on both sides and a balcony right beside it. There's a living dining room, 6.5 tatami mats, the pink room there, very nice. You've got an enormous genkan, an entrance to the house. And then in the center of the entire house, you have a toilet which apparently has 4 doors. It has doors on every single side, so you can basically go and crap from any room within like 2 seconds. That's actually kind of good. Of the year. This is the hashtag comment on this is that this is the Xobuken. This is the best. Well, different ways to read it. You could call it the shitty listing, or you could call it the best listing for shitting of the year. So that's pretty cool. Here's someone, if you want to bathe, you have to go into basically outside onto the veranda and bathe in a temporary like tub there. Wow, Nishi-Nippori. I used to go to Nishi-Nippori on my way into work. This is another one for the crappiest apartment listings of the year. Oh my god, that is a toilet. So that is the genkan and the opening door, and that is the toilet right beside the. What in the hell? So yes, you can apparently. I mean, some people, they might not ever just get past taking their shoes off if that's there. That is a weird place to put a toilet. So yeah, that's kind of funny. What else have we got in here? We've got one of the narrowest. Oh my god, that's a plan down the bottom. This is a house basically with a hallway there along the side there, and it's got these very elongated rooms. Wow! So these are the rooms there. These are the actual photos of the rooms and stuff, and it's just basically an extremely long and thin and narrow apartment. Yeah, you couldn't live in a place like that. Wow, there's two of them. So a corridor is basically the living, dining, kitchen room. This doesn't look so bad. What's wrong with this? Keiko, 25 square meters, 1DK. I lived in an apartment that was a similar shape to that. 都内そこそこ小田急物ただし屋根の上に偶然のゴリラ Oh so everything about this apartment actually looks perfectly fine, all except for the enormous gorilla there that you see on the roof that you have to live under if you want to live there. Odie Jr., boom, good morning, good to see you. So yeah, these are all very, very cool, and crappiest apartment listing of the year awards. So go check those out because they are awesome. Boom. Oh yeah, this guy. Did you guys see this video of this guy getting knocked over by a wild boar? This is something about Japan that you do. Even in Tokyo, I mean, Tokyo is basically wedged between mountains where you can ski, and ocean where you can surf, which is awesome. You get 25 million people crammed into a pretty narrow piece of land. And you've got nature basically all around. As soon as you hit mountains, Japanese don't build on mountains, they just let them be forested. So you've got all these sort of crazy native forests and stuff like that. And it means that most of Japan, certainly outside of Tokyo, is extremely close to nature. I mean, in ways that are kind of shocking at times. You get bears, you get wild boars, and wild boars. If you're an Asterix fan, I grew up reading Asterix comics about ancient French fighting the ancient Romans, holding out in one little village in northern France, or Gaul as it was at the time. And there's always this thing that they would always capture wild boars and roast them, and they always looked delicious in the comic. And in the end, they were always eating these wild pigs. Wild boars, they had them in New Zealand as well. They introduced them specifically as food for the whalers and the shippers that came through New Zealand in the early days. But boars are, they're badass animals, and they basically have this thing. They basically have the head of like a rhinoceros. It's basically just a complete heavy bone, and they've got these tusks, and they just charge and attack, and they can really, really injure people. They can mess people up. Even though they're essentially small pigs, they're really robust. They're aggressive, and you don't want to mess with them. But yet, in Japan, there are wild boars everywhere, and they frequently get lost, and they wander into urban areas. And this was taken in Fukuoka, the city which I used to live in Japan. It's a pretty major city, but let's be fair, this animal, this poor thing, probably wandered and got lost in an urban environment and was confused as hell. And it was walking along beside a train line when a train was coming, and the video shows this animal probably running in a panic. And then spotting, and the story, the way that they interpret it here is that this animal just was running along and coincidentally just happened to have the perfect timing to completely knock over a salaryman walking to work. But no, if you watch that video, you can see that animal probably got a sniff of him about 50 or 100 meters away and lined him up and perfectly bowled him over. And then started keeping on attacking him with the tusks and everything. So some cars came up and knew what to do. They knew to hit the horn to scare it away. And again, the thing was probably running scared out of its mind. I mean, the animal here is the victim, but that salaryman walking to work, getting knocked over by a wild boar and then attacked, that would really suck. And this is something in northern Japan. You have bear attacks all the time. You have deer attacks sometimes. So this is kind of serious. But Bill this boy, you got jumped by Yakuza going to work the one day. The boars are nothing. You got jumped by Yakuza? How do you get jumped by Yakuza going to work? The whole thing about Yakuza is that they're supposed to not bother you unless, you owe them money or something like that. But Actually, Bull Billiards Boy, that's a compelling story. Could you put in more information about that? Hey, DLXy, good to see you. Indeed, salarymen get no respect, not even from boys. That is true. Rugby, very good. Kimbiko, that's I like it. But Bull Billiards Boy, long story. I'm curious. That sounds like a story. I mean, yes, okay. So Japan, you have the risk of being attacked by deer, wild boar, bears, or yakuza on your way to work. I mean, seriously, it's a wonder that people just don't wear like American football outfits on their way into work. I mean, if that happened to me, I would probably put on, well, and it wouldn't do you any good either, because seriously, they only like hit the legs, or they put padding even in the legs, I guess. But that kind of sucks anyway. I talk a little bit about the idea, and I must admit, I've set up a channel, but I don't really use it, of other streaming channels. And of course, you know, there's Ustream for Japan, there's Twitch. As you can see, I'm here on YouTube, and I'm pretty happy with all the features, but I do like the fact that Twitch and others are pushing YouTube to add features and to improve what they do. And one is actually Mixer. I've had friends who have told me about Mixer on Microsoft, which is basically, I think it hooks up with the 360 devices, whatever they are, that they can, they're mainly for streaming games again, but they do have really cool interactivity features that I hope Google's paying attention to and making sure that they're keeping up with the game of these, so that's pretty good. Yeah, South Korea this week is Japan has been trolling South Korea this week about, I mentioned last week about the workers ruling that basically the Supreme Court of Korea said that workers could claim compensation for forced war labor in Japanese factories for the Japanese war effort during World War II. Theoretically, all of those claims were supposed to have been extinguished by the diplomatic relations treaty between Japan and South Korea, where Japan paid South Korea $500 million in 1965 to use to resolve compensation claims for the Japanese government and to extinguish all country-to-country claims. However, the Supreme Court in Korea found that although that was country-to-country, it doesn't apply to individual claims, and it would be against public policy, i.e. it would be unconscionable and unfair to deny these elderly formerly conscripted slave workers in factories the ability to get compensation from the still existing Japanese factories that they worked for. So they found that they had to pay $80,000 in back wages to these people for the time that they worked. And this has put a scare up Japanese companies that have a lot of assets and operations in Korea now that work with Korea, and they assume that they wouldn't have to worry about dealing with this sort of litigation because it was dealt with by the Diplomatic Relations Treaty. So this court case has been a problem, and basically the Japanese government came out very aggressively against it, and they came back and said, you know, the South Korean government has a diplomatic responsibility to extinguish this court case, either by legislation or basically to directly compensate the people itself, saying that they were paid up with the compensation, and it's the Korean government's fault that it chose to use the compensation money to invest in national infrastructure and development and not to compensate individuals. So Japan has gone kind of hardball against South Korea, which of course is kind of riling them up and trolling them, saying that, you know, this is Korea's fault, which, you know, it's kind of, it's not a good look for Japan to be doing that, especially when this is war related, and the Korean government has come back and said, hey, you guys chill, look, we're not saying that we're not going to fix this, but you're not making it easier for us by trolling us like this. But no question that the Japanese politicians were doing it deliberately to put Korea in a bad position, because, you know, they, one, it's the LDP, it's the right-wing party, and they don't want to deal with this sort of thing. So it's been interesting. The prospect is, currently, by the way, the current administration in Korea is getting some mileage at the moment about rejecting the Comfort Women deal and some other things. So they've kind of been stepping back from Japan. They disinvited, they basically made it impossible for Japanese military to participate in a military exercise recently that was supposed to be held involving them. They're kind of getting some, generating popularity by being anti-Japanese. So the Japanese government's just jumped on this as an opportunity to punch back. And they're punched pretty hard on the South Korean government, saying, hey, you're not making this any easier. But they're not making it easy on purpose. They're trolling the South Korean government over this whole thing. And again, it's kind of sad, because in the end of the day, what you have is still a bunch of victims of World War II who remain uncompensated for what they did, you know, for the work that they did. And there's no question that there are identifiable, tangible victims here. You know, they're being played around as pawns in basically a diplomatic trolling contest between Japan and South Korea, which is unfortunate. But yes, that's been happening this week. Forrester says 10% of US jobs will be lost to automation. I'm an optimist, however, that there will be more jobs that will be created as a result of automation, plus jobs that are currently being that will have parts of it automated. I'm thinking about things like driving those Tesla trucks will free up workers to do things that they don't have the ability to do right now because they're doing all this manual work that they can then go and do other tasks instead that are not yet automated or can't be automated. So I'm still optimistic about what automation is going to bring, and it can't come soon enough. I've got a job where I've just got too much stuff to deal with, and I need automation. I've implemented a lot of automation in my work myself, just to survive. And believe me, it doesn't take jobs away. It's just the speed at which we add people. And remember, I'm in a market where there's a shortage of people. Yeah, I'm an optimist about this, but at the same time, certainly automation is now getting very, very real, and it's going to happen. It's going to affect different countries differently, and it's an interesting time. Speaking of automation, again, the way that technology, AI technology, is advancing around medical technology is just really, really encouraging. Maybe a little bit personal, but I should say I've had a family member, extended family member outside of Japan, who recently successfully went through a course of chemotherapy for cancer treatment, and she mentioned that basically she allowed her DNA to be profiled with this database, an open database that they gather of cancer patients, which based upon which they find, basically the idea of chemo is that they give basically the maximum dose that you need to give to be successful. The problem is that it's difficult to customize. And so and the chemo itself is very destructive treatment. It's really harsh treatment to have to go through. But apparently, using this kind of DNA profiling, they're actually able to better customize the amount of chemo that you need to get the best result, which resulted in her case in needing to do 3 or 4 fewer sessions than you'd have to do. It meant the course of treatment took less time, and it was successful. This as well. There are now computer machine learning algorithms which have become able to identify Alzheimer's in brain 6 years earlier than it can be diagnosed in other ways. This is awesome. I mean, from my perspective, at the moment we're dealing with a lot of automation and AI in medical technology. The biggest issue with it is what to do with how do you protect the patient data. You don't want your employers to find out your pre-existing conditions and stuff like that. But at the same time, you need to know everyone with these conditions in order to be able to improve the treatment. So if they can figure out how to anonymize the data and appropriately sort of make it so that they can link it to improving treatments, I really, really am optimistic that, a bit like the automation thing before as well, we're going to be moving into an age where everybody's going to be able to look after their health and stay healthy a lot longer, a lot easier. And I think it's really, really awesome. This kind of thing, every time I read this, I just think, wow, it's really amazing. Yeah, Japan is falling behind on the skills thing. Oh yeah, we had the midterm elections this week. Congratulations, America. You did pretty much what was expected and what happens every time after a president is elected. People always basically vote the other way in one or both of their houses, and this time the House of Representatives, of course, became majority Democrat. I still don't think it was actually a really big swing against Trump, personally, per se. I mean, the same thing happened to Obama. If anything, it was actually a pretty standard sort of a thing, and I understand why. I mean, frankly, America's got the lowest unemployment ever, and whether that's due to the previous president or the current one, or who's a douchebag or whatever, personal opinions and everything aside, I can understand, again, for the people who voted for Trump, why. Yeah, at the same time, I'm kind of glad to see that there's some ability for America to rein in the complete crazy that has just been kind of... And it's been ironic that they've gotten almost nothing really done in spite of having control of both houses and the presidency. But yeah, I suppose for the Democrats to be able to at least now block and to force some sort of compromise and reasoned discussion is probably a good thing. But what I must admit I was seeing, and what I considered the midterm test elections a test of, was to see how much the opening 2.5 minutes of the movie Idiocracy had become real. Because I think it's becoming real. Idiocracy, the story of your family. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I watched this movie, and honestly, the whole movie, the 90 minutes, isn't that great a movie, but the first 2.5 minutes is pretty amazing, and you should watch it, and that's what this link is to. Yes, not just in America either, by the way. Everyone is moving in this direction. But yes, other stories that we've got, Japanese suicides among children reached the highest level in 3 decades. That's extremely depressing, although what I found even more depressing was when I clicked on this link to look at this. Japan is a persistent problem, although the number has been declining overall. But I think the link is in the top here, where it showed government. Although child suicide is not a problem unique to Japan, so of course you still have this problem with bullying, and it's a concern that I have about raising a child in Japan, about how well children are being cared for. But this graph as a reminder on the child suicide levels. You don't want to see anything on this at all, of course. And this is suicides per 100,000. In Greece, you have 1 or 2 per every 100,000. Belgium, Switzerland, there in the middle of the road, going up. Chile, Korea starts to escalate. In fact, where's Japan? Japan is really right on the OECD average, which nobody wants there to be any number here. But check out who's right at the end there and how high that is. New Zealand, yeah, still doing terribly, and it's been like this for a long time. And and New Zealand's a country where everyone knows everyone. I don't think I didn't know directly anybody who committed suicide, but as I grew up, there were cases every year of people in the school that I was at, or in the school next to the school that I was at, or people who I knew who knew someone who committed suicide. It happened a lot. And this remains, a big problem in a lot of places, and it's not an easy problem to solve. But you do get a sense that society, overall suicide rates in Japan are declining, but there is still something about the education system here and the way that children are looked after, which I think is good. And I must admit, for all the reservations I have about Japan, I must admit, so you always think, is it okay to be raising a kid in a Japanese school the way that I am? But then I look at New Zealand, which would be the alternative, and I get a reminder that Japan's doing okay in comparison. So in context, I don't know what the answer to that is, but there you go. It's not just a Japan problem, it's actually much, much worse in New Zealand. Japan just stopped aid to China this week, or they announced that they're doing it, which is probably well timed, because actually China's been taking Japanese aid for road and infrastructure projects and so on. Japan's been consistently funding development of Western China and new rural areas of China ever since diplomatic relations were established in 1972. However, in fact, it's been I think it's the 40th anniversary this year, so it might be 1978 actually by then, but that would be strange, because I think relations were established in 72. But in any case, China now gives more aid to other countries than it receives, and they actually compete in the giving of aid contests, like to Africa and places like that, and they use it as a diplomatic and political tool. So Japan's finally come to the point that we'll sign on to both develop projects, and we'll keep giving loans to China and whatever, but we're not going to treat China as ODA, overseas development assistance, anymore, because you guys are doing okay. Congratulations. Japan also just signed on to the biggest trade pact, the world's biggest trade pact, where basically, effectively, Japan is joining the EU. So free, tariff-free wine and cheese and everything coming in. We can look forward to that if you're in Japan, if you like European stuff. This is an idiot, but you get these people who record themselves driving. This person recorded themselves in Osaka driving 280 kilometers per hour, which people seem to point out almost with disappointment is 5 kilometers less than the Nozomi Shinkansen, which goes at 285 kilometers per hour. But yes, recording yourself driving. And was that a car? Yeah, it was a car, but in fact, is that the speedo there? I mean, that's just insane. 280 kilometers per hour. What is the fastest people here have ever driven? I have done 180, 190. I don't think I've done above 200. And that was in New Zealand, and that was when I was 16 years old. It's a real mistake giving driver's licenses to 15-year-olds like they do in New Zealand. They raised the age to 16 when I left, but hell, I did that when I was 16, and that was stupid. And yeah, I think that's really it. I finished watching The Haunting of Hill House. It's quite good. I recommend it. I don't like scary stuff, but I thought it was quite well made. Particularly episode 6 with all the long cuts was amazingly well cut. It was quite a good drama. I also watched, I must admit, this documentary series, The Vietnam War by Ken Burns and Lynn Novick, is the most amazing history documentary I think I can recall ever seeing. Actually, it was really, really amazing. It's long, it's incredibly detailed, but just explaining the fact that they have the people from each battle now, they can actually track them down in North Vietnam, from the North Vietnam Army and the Viet Cong, and actually have all the sides talking about each engagement and each aspect of the history and so on. You never thought this sort of thing might be possible, actually, and it is, and it's really amazing and thought-provoking to watch the whole thing. I thought I had a basic understanding of the history and the events of the Vietnam War, but this is the most, again, it's certainly not uplifting. I mean, you can guess by the subject matter, but it's actually and emotionally moving. It's long, but it's really, really good. It's an incredibly well-made documentary, and I recommend it to anyone who's ever interested in history to go check that out on Netflix. And yes, PSA, if you are going onto trains, particularly crowded trains in Japan, you do not wear your rucksack on your back. If you're going into a crowded train, you turn it around and you wear it on your front like a baby carrier. Basically because if it's on your back and you like turn a corner, you're going to knock people over and stuff like that, and it's considered, lately there's a bunch of kids and so on that are increasingly not wearing their bags on their front, and it's being seen as a source of public disturbance. So they PSA, when you're traveling in Japan, remember, if you're on a train, please wear your rucksack in the front. And that's it. That was a long show. That was 1 hour 10 minutes, but I said I had lots of topics, so yes indeed. Wow, Sergeant Bilko did 225 on a motorcycle on an autobahn in the late 80s. Thinking back, it was stupid and reckless. Yeah, in the early 90s I did 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning on an Auckland highway. I did that in I did 195 on a Honda Civic. Actually, you know what? I did do 200. My dad had a BM. Yeah, that I did over 200 in. But the thing is that, so, you start looking at, I was looking for where there might be a speed camera ahead or something like that, and I realized when you get above like 180, even if you're screwed, you can't slow down fast enough to react if you see something, by the side of the road that you need to stop. And in the Honda Civic, I did 180 as well. That had a really low set 5th gear that could really push out quite far, but like the steering wheel was shaking, and it was just stupid. It was really stupid. But yes, and I come to Japan and I never get the chance to really do that at all here, because I haven't owned a car, so there you go. Oh, that was a Kawasaki Z900. Yeah, those things were actually, back in the day, those things can do like 1 to 100 in less than 3, right? Back in a time when cars couldn't do that. Cars have only just been able to do that, right? That's an awesome motorbike, but yes indeed. Anyway, I am going to say goodnight because it is gone on quite long. I'm actually watching House of Cards at the moment. I wasn't planning to watch House of Cards, actually. To tell the truth, I wasn't actually really enjoying the last. I kind of liked the first 2 seasons of House of Cards. I liked it when Kevin Spacey was going up through the House of Representatives and undermining the presidents and all that sort of stuff. But when he became the president, to me it became boring. And I didn't like, it was just getting weird towards the end, and then they fired him because of the scandal. And I must admit, I didn't want to watch it, but I just felt like, yeah, let's see. Fox Morris, you got censored. I'm sorry about that. What the hell? I'll show it. Why not? Yeah, I must admit, I kind of watched the first few episodes. I don't like the first few episodes. It kind of felt forced. It felt like they needed to like do an extra season anyway because they had planned it. But I must admit, I'm halfway through it now, and I'm going to watch it at the end. It's still not that great. I don't really recommend it, but I'm watching it and I'm finding it more compelling as I go along. But anyway, I'm going to say goodnight. Have a good week, everybody. Stay cool till after school. Ka kite ano. I'm going to think about doing NFL reaction videos. I found it curious that you guys thought that would be a good idea, and I tell you what, maybe it is a good idea. I'm going to keep working on my Chan TV. Please keep watching it and supporting it, because I really do appreciate that. It's a great way to keep up with your favorite content on YouTube. And have a good week, and peace. Boom. Boom. It'd be really cool if I could just stop it, like when I did that pose, but I actually have to go grab the mouse and click and do end stream, which I'm about to do. You want to see me embarrass myself? That's why everyone's so enthusiastic. Well, I have no problem with embarrassing myself, so hang around. Boom. Peace.